My name is Ursula Harrison. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my 20s, I honestly thought I had my life pretty well under control. I'm an HVAC technician. Not exactly the kind of job that looks glamorous on social media, but it's solid. I started as an apprentice right out of high school, while everyone else was stacking up student loans and party stories. Now I run my own small operation with two guys working under me. I pull in around 85 grand a year, own my truck outright, and rent a quiet two-bedroom house on a street where the loudest sound after 10 p.m. is someone's sprinklers. Not rich, not struggling, just steady. My life has a rhythm. Monday through Friday, I'm crawling through attics and basements, trying not to fall through ceilings while I save people from melting in the summer and freezing in the winter. Sometimes there are emergency calls on Saturdays. I hit the gym 3 times a week, unless a 2 a.m. no heat call wrecks my sleep. Sundays are sacred. Meal prep, laundry, and whatever game or show is on while I fall asleep on the couch with a bowl halfway finished on the coffee table. I've got a small, solid group of friends from high school. On Wednesday nights, we play basketball at the rec center, talk trash, then grab junk food afterward. Nothing wild, nothing dramatic, and I liked it that way. My house matches my brain. Functional, practical, and maybe a little too neat. 2 bedrooms, one for me, one that's half guest room, half storage, half I'll organize this someday. The backyard is a patch of grass that I keep promising to fix next month. The garage, though, is my pride. Wall-mounted racks, labeled bins, hoses coiled perfectly, gauges in their cases. Every wrench has its place. Every fitting is sorted by size. My first boss told me, "A disorganized tech is an unemployed tech, Ursula." I took that to heart. My best friend Mia loves to say I live like a divorced dad who won the custody battle over all the power tools. She's also the one who shoved me out of my routine and straight into the mess I'm about to tell you about. "Ursula, I swear to God, if you bail on me again, I'm sending a wellness check," Mia said one Friday evening, standing in my doorway with her arms crossed. "You work, you go to the gym, you come home. That's not a personality, that's a loop." I held up my phone. "I have invoices to do, grown-up things. You can date your invoices tomorrow. We're going to that new sports bar downtown." She looked me up and down. "And you're changing that shirt. You smell like attic dust and coil cleaner." "That's my signature scent," I muttered, but she was already pushing me toward my bedroom. So I went. The sports bar was crowded and loud, TVs screaming from every wall. Not exactly my natural habitat. The air smelled like fried food and spilled beer. I was halfway through planning my escape when Mia waved someone over. "Ursula, this is Ethan," she said. "He works with my cousin at the gym." Ethan slid into the booth with an easy smile. Dark hair, warm brown eyes, t-shirt that actually fit his shoulders. Not some unreal model, but definitely the kind of man people turn to look at twice. He ordered a beer, joked with the bartender like they'd been friends for years, and then turned his attention to me. "So," he said, "Mia tells me you're the one who saves old people from freezing to death when their heaters explode." "She's overselling it," I said. "Sometimes I just stop their units from sounding like dying animals." He laughed. "I manage a fitness center, so I basically watch people argue with treadmills all day. Your job sounds cooler." We fell into easy conversation. Neither of us had gone to college, and both of us were just slightly allergic to people who looked down on that. He liked that I had my own business. I liked that he didn't act weird when I told him I worked with mostly men and carried tools heavier than he did. "I like people who know who they are," Ethan said at one point, leaning back. "Not pretending, just real." Real. I remember that word clearly. Later, it would feel like a joke I didn't know I was part of. For the first few months, things were simple. He'd come over after his shift. We'd watch shows, order takeout, fall asleep halfway through some detective series on the couch. He liked that I could fix things. I liked that he didn't complain when I had to answer an emergency call in the middle of the night. He lived with a roommate, Mark, another gym guy, who always had a protein shake in his hand and an opinion on everyone's squat form. Whenever I picked Ethan up, Mark would yell, "Ursula, our sink isn't leaking yet. You're a wizard." It felt normal, calm, like I'd managed to find a relationship that didn't make my blood pressure spike. The first mention of his ex didn't even register as a red flag. We were at my place watching one of those artsy movies Mia insists on, the kind where people stare out windows and call it character development. Ethan tilted his head and said, "My ex used to love this director. She'd pause scenes to talk about the framing and the symbolism and all that stuff. I shrugged. I'm just hoping nobody dies at the end. That's my level of analysis. He laughed. The moment passed. People mention exes. It's normal. A week later, we were at the mall because he needed new sneakers. As we walked, he slowed near this sleek, overlit men's boutique with mannequins and expensive casual wear. Oh man, he said. Lena used to drag me into this place all the time. She had great taste, always made sure I looked sharp. Lena. I mentally pinned the name. She sounds expensive, I said lightly. You're lucky I think $50 for jeans is highway robbery. He laughed again, let me steer him into a budget shoe store, and that was that. Until it wasn't. The next week, it was. My ex always booked us little weekend trips for our anniversaries. She was amazing at planning things. Another night. My ex always remembered exactly how I take my coffee. She'd have it ready for me before I woke up. At a random restaurant. My ex loved this place. She used to say it reminded her of the spot we went to after she got her first big promotion. He stopped saying her name. It was always just, my ex. Like she was less of a person and more of a legend. A yardstick he'd quietly set down between us at the table. Each comment was so small it felt childish to react. But they stacked. Thin sheets of comparison laid over my skin until I could barely feel anything else. Mia noticed before I admitted it was a problem. We were at our Wednesday night game, sweat pouring, shoes squeaking. I kept missing shots. Not just off, wild. Like my brain was somewhere else entirely. During a water break, Mia tossed me the ball and squinted. Okay, Harrison, what's going on in that overworked brain of yours? Nothing, I said, just tired. Liar, is it work? No. Ethan? I hesitated just long enough. There it is, she said softly. Talk. I sighed. He keeps bringing up his ex, like a lot. Her style, her job, what she did for their anniversaries, how she handled things. It's always, my ex did this, my ex loved that. I know people have pasts. I just feel like I'm constantly being compared and always coming in second. Mia's expression hardened. How often are we talking? Multiple times a week, I said quietly. That's not reminiscing, Ursula. That's a performance review you never asked for. I let out a humorless laugh. He says he's just being honest about his history, that I'm too sensitive. Of course he does, she scoffed. Here's the thing. If every story about his past ends with how amazing she was, it's not a story, it's a standard. And he's measuring you against it. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She could see it in my face. Look, Mia went on more gently. I'm not saying break up with the guy tomorrow, but at least admit this doesn't feel good. It's okay if something doesn't feel good, even if it sounds harmless on paper. I went home thinking about that. But Ethan showed up with my favorite takeout, kissed my forehead, and fell asleep with his head on my shoulder like always. It was easier to tell myself I was overthinking than to accept that the foundation had a crack. By month 5, the comparisons had turned mean without changing tone. We were out to dinner with my buddy James and his girlfriend Tanya. Nice place, real napkins, a waiter who said, of course, instead of no problem. Conversation bounced from work horror stories to vacation plans. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan said, yeah, my ex worked in finance. She was making 6 figures right out of college. She was insanely driven, always working on the next big thing. Tanya's eyes flicked to me, then back to Ethan. James shifted in his seat. Different paths, you know, James said carefully. Not everyone wants that kind of pressure. Oh, totally, Ethan said quickly. I'm just saying, it was inspiring watching her push herself like that. The implication sat there between my plate and his glass. And not that. I cut my food into perfect little squares so my hands wouldn't shake. On the drive home, the silence in the car felt like packing foam, smothering. Why do you keep bringing her up? I finally asked. Who? He said, like we hadn't just sat through a dinner sponsored by his glorious ex. Your ex, Lena. You mentioned her 3 times tonight. He scoffed. I did not. You did, I snapped. Her job, her ambition, how inspiring she was. You talk about her like she's some flawless goddess and I'm your, what, recovery project? That's not fair, he said, jaw tight. I'm just being honest about my past. You can't expect me to pretend she never existed. I don't want you to pretend, I said, my voice low. I want you to stop acting like she's the standard and I'm the knockoff. You're reading way too much into this, Ursula. You're being insecure. I'm being reactive, I shot back, because my boyfriend keeps telling me another woman did everything better than I do. That's not insecurity. That's basic self-respect. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, eyes fixed on the road. You know she hurt me, right? I'm still working through that. If she hurt you so badly, I asked quietly, why do you talk about her like she's still the best thing that ever happened to you? The question hung in the air like smoke. He didn't answer, not that night. I didn't know it yet, but that conversation was the crack that finally let the truth seep in. I wasn't just dating Ethan. I was auditioning for a part that had already been cast. It took a story in a coffee shop to show me exactly how replaceable I was in his mind. And eventually, I decided to show him exactly how that feels. I wish I could say things got better after that night in the car, that Ethan reflected, apologized, or even paused before praising the saintly Lena again. But if anything, he doubled down, just quieter, softer, almost like he was testing whether I'd call him out again. 2 weeks passed. Work was hectic, summer heat rolling in hard and fast. I barely had time to breathe, much less think about my relationship. Ethan and I drifted in a weird limbo, still together, still going through the motions, but with something tense and unspoken sitting between us. Then came the barbecue incident. Mia had invited a bunch of people to her backyard cookout, the kind with too much food, too many lawn chairs, and not enough shade. I showed up early with a cooler full of drinks, sweat already forming under my collar. Ethan arrived an hour later, and the first thing he did was frown at me. You're wearing that? I looked down at my outfit, khaki shorts, white polo, clean sneakers, standard barbecue gear. What's wrong with this? It's fine, he said quickly. It's just, Lena always said a person should dress like they respect the event. I stared at him. It's a backyard barbecue, Ethan. I'm not showing up in a blazer. He sighed dramatically. Never mind. I forget you get defensive when I try to help. Help! Right. I excused myself before I said something that would get me banned from Mia's house forever. But it wasn't over. Later, while we were standing near the grill, flipping burgers and avoiding each other's eyes, Ethan whispered, My ex used to plan parties like this. She was incredible at hosting. Decor, food, everything. It always felt so put together. I slowly set down the spatula. Mia overheard. And Mia has never been good at minding her business. You know, she said loudly, looking Ethan dead in the eyes, Ursula is pretty incredible too. Maybe you should try appreciating the person who's actually here instead of the one who isn't. Ethan blinked. I wasn't comparing. Yes, Mia cut in. You were, and you do it all the time. His jaw tightened. Mine did too, but for different reasons. A part of me wanted to defend him. Another part wanted to let Mia keep going. But I pulled her aside, whispering, Stop, please, I'll handle this. She frowned but nodded. I didn't handle anything, though. I let it simmer, because deep down I knew something was coming. A break, a reveal, something. And it arrived on a quiet Thursday night. We were at Ethan's apartment, curled up on the couch, watching a show neither of us cared about anymore. He was scrolling on his phone, Instagram as usual. He paused at a picture. That looks incredible, he murmured. What does? Lena's new post. She's in Italy. His voice softened in this faraway way. She always wanted to go there. A cold, sharp feeling slid under my skin. So she's traveling, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Good for her. Yeah, he sighed. She always talked about Tuscany. She loved the architecture, the old streets, everything. He spoke like he was remembering a life he'd lived with her, one I was merely a footnote in. I reached for the remote and paused the show. Ethan, we need to talk. He didn't look up. About what? Your ex, I said bluntly. You bring her up constantly, and I need to understand why. He finally set his phone down, irritation flickering across his face. We've been over this. I'm just being honest about my past. No, I said steadily. You're comparing me to her every single week, sometimes every day. You're overreacting. Then answer me one thing, I said, leaning forward. If she was so perfect, if she had the best job, the best style, the best everything, why did you break up? His posture stiffened, his expression shut down. It's complicated, he said again. Try me. Silence stretched between us until it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Finally, he sighed heavily and rubbed his face. Fine. You want to know? I'll tell you. He stood up suddenly. Let's go somewhere else. I can't tell this story here. I blinked. Where? He grabbed his jacket. The coffee shop on Madison Street. I froze. The one he always mentions? The one from his breakup story? The one he speaks about with reverence and heartbreak tangled together? I followed him out. The coffee shop was dim, warm, and mostly empty. Worn leather seats, Edison bulbs, the faint smell of nutmeg. Ethan sat across from me at a small table, clasping his hands like he was preparing for a confession. Okay, he said quietly. Here's what happened with Lena. I waited, carefully. We dated for almost 2 years, he began, and everything seemed great. We were planning a future together. She was ambitious, successful, thoughtful. She made celebrations amazing. She pushed me to be better. She was the complete package. His eyes went distant. But then, out of nowhere, she ended things, right here. He gestured around the cafe, and his voice cracked just faintly. We were supposed to go to her company's big holiday gala that night. She told me to meet her here beforehand so we could ride together. I showed up dressed up, nervous, excited, and he swallowed. She showed up in jeans and a sweater. No makeup, hair in a bun, nothing like what she wears to events. I pictured him sitting alone, dressed up in a room full of strangers, waiting for the perfect woman who never arrived. She sat me down, Ethan continued, and told me she'd been thinking about us for a long time, said the relationship wasn't working for her anymore, said she needed to focus on her career. She ended it in 5 minutes. Then she walked out without even offering to drive me home. He looked up at me with raw hurt. I had to take a rideshare back to my place in a suit. My neighbors saw me crying on the sidewalk. It was humiliating, easily the worst night of my life. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Not from sympathy, though the story was brutal. No, it was something else. Because as he talked, a realization unfolded slowly, painfully, like a bruise blooming under the skin. He didn't just compare me to Lena because she was his past. He compared me to Lena because he never got over her, because she was still the standard, because she was still the wound. And I wasn't the girlfriend. I was the replacement part, a tool to fill the empty spot she left behind. He reached across the table and took my hand. You asked why I bring her up so much. It's not because I want her back. It's because I'm scared of being blindsided like that again. But his eyes told a different story. He wasn't afraid of losing me. He was afraid of losing another version of her. Something inside me went cold, sharp, clear. So that's what happened, he whispered. Now do you understand? I pulled my hand away gently. I understand perfectly, I said softly. And I did, more than he knew, because he had just given me everything I needed. The script, the lines, the location. The exact blueprint of the heartbreak he'd never stopped honoring. He didn't know it yet, but the next time we sat in this coffee shop, I wouldn't be the one crying. I would be the one walking away. After that night at the coffee shop, something in me shifted. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. Ethan had spent months telling me, in 100 different ways, that I wasn't Lena, and that this was a flaw I could never fix. But when he described the breakup, the exact setting, the exact words, the exact humiliation, he didn't realize he handed me the truth he'd been avoiding. He wasn't in love with me. He was in love with the story of how she hurt him. He wasn't comparing me to his ex because he missed her. He was comparing me to her because he was still trapped in the moment she left him. And I was just a warm body standing where she had once stood. Something inside me crystallized. If I was only the placeholder, then he could watch the placeholder walk away, in the exact way his perfect Lena had. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't pettiness. It was poetic symmetry. And it was the only way he would understand what he had been doing to me. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and started working. Not HVAC work, planning work. At 9:15 a.m., I sent him a text. Can you meet me at the coffee shop on Madison at 3 p.m.? We need to talk. He replied in under 10 seconds. Is everything okay? My fingers hovered over the screen. We'll talk at 3. Short, neutral, familiar. Just like Lena's message had been when she dumped him. The hours crawled by. I fixed 3 AC units, replaced a capacitor, flushed a drain line, and barely remembered any of it. Everything felt like autopilot. At lunch, Mia called. You sound weird, she said immediately. What happened? I'm ending things with Ethan. Finally, she muttered. How are you doing it? Exactly the way his ex did. There was a silence, then a slow whistle. Oh, you're going cinematic. I approve. Just don't catch criminal charges, or punch him, or key his car. No promises, I said. But I meant it jokingly, mostly. At 2:45, I stepped into the coffee shop on Madison Street. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I felt calm, almost disturbingly calm. I ordered a black coffee, nothing fancy, nothing sweet, and took the exact seat he'd described from his breakup story, near the window, left-hand side, second table. At precisely 3, Ethan walked in. He looked different. Not polished, not messy, just uncertain. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on me, and he gave a small, relieved smile. There you are, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. I was worried. You didn't sound like yourself. For the first time in months, I looked at him and felt absolutely nothing. Ethan, I said gently, I've been thinking a lot about what you told me yesterday. He nodded eagerly. Yeah, I know it was a lot. I probably shouldn't have dumped all that on you, but... No, I cut in softly. I'm glad you told me. It helped me understand everything. He relaxed a little. Good, because I really want us to... The thing is, I said, folding my hands on the table, this relationship isn't working for me anymore. The sentence slid out cleanly, smooth, familiar. His smile faded instantly. What? Ursula, what are you talking about? I inhaled slowly. And then, word for word, I repeated Lena's script. I've been thinking about us for a while, I said calmly, and the relationship just isn't working for me anymore. I need to focus on myself. He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. What? What do you mean you need to focus on yourself? That's exactly what Lena said to me. I held my gaze steady. I know. You're joking, he said, his voice cracking. Is this some kind of test? A prank? Ursula, seriously. It's not a joke, I said quietly, and it's not a test. It's simply the truth. His breathing grew uneven. Is this because of what I said about my ex? Is this because I brought up Lena? I told you I'm working on it. You've spent 6 months telling me how much better she was, I said calmly. Her style, her ambition, her hosting, her everything. Every time you talked about her, you told me I wasn't enough. I just finally listened. That's not fair, he snapped. I was just being honest about my past. And I'm being honest about my present, I said softly. He dropped his face into his hands. Ursula, please, don't do this, please. He said Lena didn't even walk him out that day. So I didn't either. I stood up, picked up my keys, and pushed my chair in neatly. I hope you heal, Ethan, I said gently. But I'm done being compared to someone who left you years ago. When I turned towards the door, he reached out. Ursula, don't leave me like this. At least talk to me. Take care, I said. And I walked out, just like she did. No dramatic scene, no shouting, just a clean, cold ending. Exactly the way he'd described it. Except this time, he wasn't the abandoned boyfriend in a suit. He was the man who'd pushed away the woman who tried to love him. My phone started buzzing before I even reached my truck. Calls, texts, voicemails. I blocked him. Then I blocked Mark. Then his mom. Then his cousins. Then 3 numbers I didn't even recognize. At home, I showered off the sweat and dust of the day, made myself a simple dinner, and sat on the couch, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. Mia texted. So, did you do it? I replied. It's done. How'd he take it? I hesitated before typing. Exactly the way I expected, exactly the way she described. Damn, she wrote. That's cold, but deserved. And strangely enough, for the first time in months, maybe longer, my chest felt light. Like I could finally breathe in a room where the air had been stale for too long. But of course, Ethan wasn't finished with me. Not even close. The storm hadn't even started yet. The next morning I woke up to chaos. Even though Ethan's number was blocked, that didn't stop the universe, or apparently half his contact list, from trying to reach me. 12 missed calls from unknown numbers, 17 texts from numbers I didn't recognize, 3 voicemails from women I'd never met. The first voicemail was from a trembling voice. Ursula, this is Ethan's mom. I don't know what happened, but he's devastated. Please call me. Delete. The second was sharper. This is Mark's girlfriend, Jade. Ethan is literally having a panic attack. You can't just leave someone like that. Delete. The third was theatrical. This is Brianna, Ethan's childhood friend. He's crying, he's confused. He says you blindsided him. Please give him closure. This isn't right. Delete. Closure, closure, closure. Funny how everyone wanted closure for him, but not one person had ever cared about what months of constant comparisons did to me. By noon, I'd blocked 10 more numbers. By 2 p.m., I'd muted my phone entirely. By evening, I had a bottle of wine, a Netflix documentary, and the first sense of peace I'd felt in half a year. But the quiet didn't last. The social media meltdown. Friday morning, Mia sent me a screenshot. Ethan had posted a long, vague monologue on Instagram. Sometimes people pretend to love you until they don't. Sometimes the person you trust the most ends up treating you exactly how you fear. Just remember, your heart deserves more than cold endings. No name, no details, but anyone who knew him, or us, would connect the dots. Mia texted under the screenshot, He's going full emo poet. Should I comment something petty? I replied, No, let him perform. I meant it. Let him drown in his own theatrics. I wasn't going to be dragged back into the role of emotional caretaker. Not this time. Enter the new girl. 1 week later, I was at the gym minding my business when Tommy, one of my junior techs, jogged up to me. Boss, you're gonna want to hear this, he said, grinning like he'd been waiting all morning. What now? Ethan has a new girlfriend. I blinked. Already? Tommy nodded. And guess what her name is? I narrowed my eyes. You're joking. He held up his phone. Her name is Alina. Tell me that's not Lena, but rebooted. I stared at the photo. A petite woman with glossy hair, a fitted dress, and an expression like she was permanently posing. Lena 2.0, discount edition. Tommy continued, My girlfriend works at the same gym. Apparently, Ethan told everyone he finally found someone who appreciates him. He even posted them holding hands at brunch. I shook my head. That was fast. Tommy smirked. That's not even the good part. I sighed. God help me. What's the good part? The pattern repeats. Tommy leaned in conspiratorially. So the girls at the gym say Ethan already started comparing the new girl to Lena, like nonstop. Lena used to cook this. Lena decorated her apartment like that. Blah, blah, blah. I stared. Of course he did. Of course. And, Tommy lowered his voice dramatically, he took Alina to the same coffee shop yesterday, the one on Madison. My eyebrows rose. You're kidding. Nope, and apparently she asked him why he seemed sad there, and guess what he did? I rubbed my forehead. He told her the breakup sob story. Tommy nodded vigorously, word for word, like he was reading a script. I let out a disbelieving laugh. And then, Tommy said, my girlfriend told me that Alina dumped him right there. What? I choked. She said he seemed emotionally stuck on his ex. Ex-ES now, technically. And she didn't want to be compared to dead relationships. I pressed a hand over my mouth. He got dumped, at the same location, by a woman who realized he was using her as a placeholder for someone else. It was almost too poetic. Tommy grinned. Boss, that man is running laps in his own emotional maze. You didn't break him. Lena did. I didn't answer. I was too busy wondering if fate just had a sense of humor, or if Ethan genuinely couldn't break out of his loop. The grocery store apology. 3 weeks later, I ran into Alina's predecessor, Ethan's old roommate's girlfriend, Jade, at the grocery store. She hesitated before approaching. Ursula, can we talk? I shrugged. Sure. She wrung her hands. I owe you an apology. I gave you a hard time about the breakup, but I get it now. I raised an eyebrow. Ethan told Mark everything, she said. The comparisons, how often he talked about Lena. And then when that new girl dumped him the same way, he spiraled, hard. I didn't say anything. Jade sighed. You didn't break him. His obsession with Lena did. You did the right thing. I nodded slowly. I know. And I did. Probably for the first time. Meeting someone new. 4 months later, I started dating someone else. His name was Sam. He was a physical therapist, kind, stable, comfortable in himself in a way that didn't require anyone else to shrink. We'd been dating for a little while when we stopped by the Madison coffee shop before a movie, purely out of convenience. Sam was laughing about something when I noticed him freeze. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking over my shoulder. I turned. Ethan walked in. He stopped mid-step when he saw me. He looked better, clearer, more grounded. He approached slowly. Hi, Ursula, he said quietly. Hey, I replied. Sam glanced between us, sensing the tension. Ethan swallowed hard. Listen, I wanted to say something. I've been in therapy. A lot, actually. I said nothing. I realize now that I kept comparing you to Lena because I didn't know how to let go of what happened. I used those comparisons to protect myself. And it wasn't fair. Not to you, not to anyone. He inhaled shakily. I'm sorry, truly. It didn't sting. It didn't thrill. It didn't break me open. It just felt complete. Thank you, I said softly. I appreciate that. He nodded, offered Sam a polite smile, then stepped away to order his drink. Sam waited until he was out of earshot. That your ex? Yeah, I said. The one I told you about. It seems like he's doing better, Sam said gently. Yeah, I said, smiling faintly. He is. And I meant it. For both of us. The final twist. 6 months later, I attended Mia's wedding. It was beautiful. Fairy lights, soft music, tables decorated with eucalyptus and gold accents. During dinner, she leaned over and whispered, Don't freak out, but Ethan's here. I blinked. Why? He's dating one of Kyle's coworkers. And sure enough, there he was, sitting at a table across the room, smiling, relaxed, not chained to the ghost of his ex. Later, during the reception, he approached me at the bar. He looked peaceful. Ursula, he said softly, can I say one thing? I nodded. I know I apologized before, but I want to say it again. Losing you made me realize I'd been living in a breakup I never healed from, and repeating the same mistake with other people. You didn't deserve that. I smiled gently. Thank you, Ethan. For the first time, I believed he meant it. For what it's worth, he added softly, the way you ended things hurt. A lot. But it was the mirror I needed. I didn't like who I saw. I'm glad you learned from it, I said. He nodded, squeezed my hand briefly, and walked away. Sam found me